Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Great to have all of you here as we're dedicated by Shalom Fogelty, Nishmas Yaakov Zeb Ben Yehuda Aryeh, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tivya Miriam Bas Gad, Yosef Ben Siyam Ben Yaakov Zev, by Baruch Ian Lee, Nishmas Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Esther Bas Gitla, Avram Ben Shmuel HaKoyim, Yaakov Yumansky, with Akos Satayv, to the Rav and the Zoom family and Nachas from children and grandchildren, by A.B. Spry from Nachas from children and grandchildren, by Ed Salah from London and Joshua Rosenberg, a virtual Talmud. We want to continue to learn for our Bava Basra Daf, Naftali Javelin, who I understood was in the hospital, Naftali Eliezer Ben Bela. He should have a refuah shalem b'seich shachal Yisrael. And our Chaver Aaron Swade should have a refuah shalem as well. We welcome in Saba, and we welcome in Mark Frankel, Chaim Kramer, Yitzi Fuchs, Aaron Swade, Marshall Castle, Irving Fishbaum, Dr. Guy, Stephen Holtzman, Nachman Chapler, Mo Kushner, Ben Zion Cohn, Mel Zachter, Baruch Ian, Shalom Fogel, Moshe Lehman, Berish Gesserman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Rabbi Krant. We welcome in David Helfgott on Kalalashin. Here in Shul we have Gedalia Engel, Rich Lenner, Avram Schenkman, and Ruvain Shannet. We get a mazel tov. Our grandson was named today, Menachem Dov. Shvi Zeicha that Kishem Shenichnas Labris, Ken Yekonas L'Torah L'Chuppah L'Maisim Tovim. Mazel tov to Saba on the having a new Einikel. And we are holding with Mark's shenanigans with Marshall. Yes, what's the name? Aryeh Ben Kalman. Neshama should have an aliyah. As we welcome in Rezel Bas Alta Yaakov Dov. Rezel Bas Alta Yaakov David. Neshama should have an aliyah. As we welcome in now Ruvain Pollack, who's getting in under the wire over here. And, okay. So as I said, and Dr. Block is joining us. As I said, what happened to Mark Frankel? Oh, there he is. There he is. And I know he was getting nervous about me exposing him. But listen, what could you do? This is just the fact that he deals with you is exposure. Hey,
it's better the other way.
Okay, so what happens over here is Amar of Chista, Machaloi Shava Chamesh B'Sheish. Mark rooked Marshall. He sold him something that was worth 5 for 6. Now, when you sell something that's worth 5 for 6, that's oina. But then the joke's on Mark. The hooker, it went up in price. V'amar al shmeina, and went up to 8. So here he sold him something 5 for 6. But you know, Marshall always says, "He who laughs last laughs best," and it went up to 8. So now, says the Gemara, Minis Anna, who was cheated? Loikeach. Marshall was cheated because initially he sold him something for 5 for 6. So Loikeach Yochel Lazabai. If Marshall wants to back out, he can. But V'loi Meicher. Mark can't come with a sob story now. I made a mistake. I sold you for 5 for 6, so I cheated you. I want it back now. Marshall says, sure, I'm going to give it back to you after you cheated me, and now it's worth 8. I'm going to give it back to you? Mishum da'amalei, because Marshall tells him, Ilu lo yoy nisan, if you wouldn't have cheated me. If you would have sold me something 5 for 5, lo have matzis hadrisbach, you wouldn't have been able to get it back. So hashtadai nisa, now that you cheated me, matzis hadrisbach, the fact that you cheated me, you want to have a bigger claim? Get lost, Buster. And the Gemara says v'tana tuna, and our Mishnah backs this up, because what does it say in the Mishnah? Yafais, if he sells him something good, it was supposed to be good, v'nim tzurais, and it's found to be bad, so lekech yachal lazabay. Marshall could back out because he was rook, but v'lei meicher. And that means that even though if subsequently it went up in value, Mark can't try to get out of it. Now the reverse is true also. Let's say Mark sold him something worth 6 for 5, so he undercharged him. V'huzlu v'amdu al gimel, and now it goes down to 3. Right, so Marshall wants to say, well, it was worth 6. You sold it to me for 5. Let's void the sale. Sure, right. Minisana, who was the one that was hurt? It was the meicher. It was the seller, because he sold something 6 worth for 5. So Mark could have backed out. But only Meicher Yachal Arzabay. Only Mark backs out. Marshall can't back out. What's his claim going to be? What's his claim? He got a good deal. What's his claim? Now it went down in value. Tough noogies. Damalei, because Mark says, Ilu loyoy nisan, if I wouldn't have been hurt, loy having matzis hadrisbach, if I wouldn't have been hurt, right? If it would be 5 for 5. Right? You wouldn't be able to back out. Hashta, now that you got a better deal, matzis hadrisbach, you want to back out? Not likely. The Tanatuna. We learned the same thing in the Mishnah. Rois, if Mark sold him something bad, in other words, that was the deal, that it was inferior produce. V'nimtzel yafas, and it was found to be good, so Mark could say, hey, listen, that wasn't what I was planning to sell you. So, moicher yakal azabay, v'loy lekech, and not the buyer. So the Gemara says, so then what's the Kiddush over here? I mean, that which Rav Chisda is saying over here, you're telling me it's a Beferish Mishnah. My Kamash Malon, Masnizini. It's a Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Ima Masnizin, if it's in the case of the Mishnah, Havamina, I might think, Dilma de Rav Chisda, in the case of Rav Chisda, Travayu Matzi Hadrebu. Maybe in the case of Rav Chisda, they both could retract, because this sale is not a good sale. So maybe they both could retract. Our Mishnah, however, the Chiddush is that when let's say the case of where Mark sold them chitin yafais, and it was found to be rois. So we said that the buyer could retract. Maybe that's not so simple, because Marshall should know every seller says it's good, and the other way around. Let's see it inside. Says the Gemara, Ima masnis and havamina dilma d'Rav Chisda travayu matzi hadribu. Umasnisin ha'asal ashmina. Our Mishnah is telling us that in the event that Mark said it's Yafais and he finds it Rise, so Marshall could back out. The Sokadaita Kamina, I might have thought Mishum Dichsiv Ra Yomer Akaina. The buyer always says, "Oh, that's not good stuff." Now, that's only a bargaining mechanism, because when you haggle, how do you call that good? And the seller says, "Oh, I got great stuff," but maybe it's not to be taken literally. It's only to be taken as the method of haggling, and therefore it says no. If Mark says it's good and it's found to be inferior, then Marshall could back out. And we don't just say it's, what we call hagel rai. Now the Mishnah says, Shchamsis v'nimtzis levana. If Mark said he was selling him red wheat, and he finds it to be white wheat. So we said that there, both of them could back out, because it's two different species. Now, Shchamsis means that it was baked by the sun. Now, from the fact that we're saying that there's two species, white and red, from the fact that we're saying baked with the sun is red, that shows that the sun is red. The Gemara says, says the Gemara, let's see it inside. Amra papa midiktani levana, and there's two types of wheat, white and red. So when we say shchams is baked by the sun, shmami no haishimsha sum kosri, that the color of the sun is red. In other words, what's the color of the sun? Is it white or is it red? So the Gemara says it's red. Teda, because samka tzafra ofanya, because it's red in the morning and it's red by sunset. So then why in the middle of the day isn't it red? And that which you don't see the redness during the day is because nahayrinu the loibari, because since it's so bright, you don't have a clear vision of it. In other words, the fact that the sun is so bright, it makes it hard to detect the real color of the sun. And in the morning and towards the night, where it's not so bright, then you're able to see more clearer the true color of the sun. So the Gemara says, Meisvei, it says by tzaras, umarehu, and its appearance is amoik min ha'or. The leprosy is deeper than the skin. Kemara chama, which is amuka min hatzel, like the appearance of the sun, which is deeper, in this case, further than the shade. So, since the spot of the tzaras is white, there's actually 4 shades of white, so that would mean that the sun is white. So then, v'hasam lavanu, there, the leprosy is white, so when we're comparing it to the sun, doesn't that mean that the sun is white? So the Gemara says, Kemarachama v'loy kemarachama. Like the sun, but not exactly like the sun. Kemarachama, like the sun, da'amuka min hatzel, that it's further, deeper from the shade. V'loy kemarachama, but not like the sun, the ilu hasam lavain, because the leprosy is a shade of white, v'hacha edain, but the sun is red. So now the Gemara says, I don't understand. You had a question if the sun was white or if it was red. If the sun is white, then how could it be red in the morning and in the evening? Ulamai desol tait meikara, haka simka tzafra ofanya. It's red in the morning and towards the evening. Says the Gemara, B'tzafra, in the morning, the cholfa abei verde de Gan Eden. That's because it passes by the roses of Gan Eden. Gan Eden is in the east, Gan Eden mikedem. So it passes by the roses of Gan Eden, that's why it's red. Befanya, in the afternoon, it's red, the cholfa pischa de Gan, because it passes by the doorway of Ganem. That's why it's red in the afternoon. The ikdamre ibcha. Some say just the opposite. Some say that in the night it's red because it's opposite Gan Eden, so it's opposite the east, and in the morning it's red because it's opposite Ganem in the west. You know, it's interesting that the ikda amre is a bigger argument why people enjoy seeing a sunset. Right? If according to the first shot, if the sunset reminds you of the door of hell, it's not such a beautiful thing to say a sunset. But if the sunset is opposite the roses of Gan Eden, then it's something nice to see the sunset.
What about the green flash?
What about the green flash?
Have you ever seen it?
You mean the northern lights?
No. When the sun breaks the horizon in the morning,
Right.
it'll turn green for like 20 seconds.
Like a rind of green?
Kelly green.
The whole sun?
The whole sun.
I've never seen that.
It's amazing.
That's only in certain places or all over the place?
Certain places
Certain places.
have the right atmosphere. It's amazing. It's like...
I don't know. The Gemara doesn't talk about it. I don't know. And I've never seen it myself. I've never even seen pictures of it.
I didn't have a phone back then.
I mean, do they show pictures of the sun being green?
There are on the internet.
Yeah?
Yeah. It like...
I'm going to look. I'll try to look into that.
Makes you know Hashem is there. It's like the Northern Lights.
Now, yayin v'nimtza chaimitz, wine, and you find it to be vinegar. Again, you're dealing with Mark and Marshall. So Mark says he's selling him wine, and it turns out to be vinegar. Vinegar, and it turns out to be wine. They both could back out. Lema masnis and Rebbe he v'loy rabban. Let's say our Mishnah is Rebbe, and not. By the way, nobody asked me this, but you'll say, what's the difference if the sun is red or white? So Tosfos says an interesting thing. Tosfos says the difference is if Rabbi Kran says he's not going to benefit from something that's red, then he can't benefit from the sun. Because the sun is red. If he says he's not going to benefit from something that's white, he could benefit from the sun. So anyway, huh?
Because the sun is red in the morning and night and at the beginning and white in the day.
No, it's not white in the daytime. It's too bright to be able to see its true color. But it's not white.
White light?
Huh?
If they're like that, he wouldn't be able to walk out.
What?
He's always going to get enough of the sun by day. He'll never be able to walk out of his house.
Correct. It would be a very dumb neder. He would have to go to a chacham and say, if I would have known that I wouldn't be able to walk out of my house, I wouldn't have done it.
Maybe he wouldn't even need Hakar. Maybe he would get just like saying he makes it.
No, it's not like sleeping 3 days. He could.
Impossible.
No, it's not. He could stay inside. It's not like sleeping 3 days.
Yeah, okay.
Now, I could see that Rabbi Kranz once did this. Okay. But anyway, so again, getting back to Mark and Marshall, Yayin v'nimtza chaimitz, wine, and Marshall finds it's vinegar, or vinegar and Marshall finds it's wine. Shneyan yechaylan lachzebem. They could both back out. So the Gemara says, Lema masnis and Rebbe he v'loy rabban. Let's say our Mishnah is Rebbe and not the Rabbanan. The question is, the Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Yayin v'chaimitz min echadhu. Wine and vinegar is one species. And therefore, if Berish takes truma for wine from vinegar, it's good. Rabbi says, Shnei minim, it's two species, and you can't be Tairim one from the other. So the Chayra, our Mishnah, that says that both of them could back out, is going according to Rebbe, who holds that it's two different types. And that's why they both could back out. Says, well, no. Afilu Tamer Rabbanan. Ad kan loy plige Rabbanan alei de Rebbe. The Rabbanan only argue on Rebbe because they hold that vinegar is bad wine, or wine is better quality. And therefore, the Rabbanan hold that you could take from inferior, it's not good, because you're supposed to give from the cream, but if you do it, it's good truma and meiser. So ad kan loy plige Rabbanan loy de Rebbe alelinim meiser truma could Rebbe law. The Amar Rebbe law, for Rebbe law says manayin l'toyrim min hara ala yafa. How do you know if you take from that which is bad for that which is good? Something that Marshall would do, right? He gives the cheap stuff to the kohen, right? Truma, that it's still a good truma. Shenemar, because the pasuk says v'lo yisisu alav chet, and then you won't have a sin. Barimchem eschel b'mimenu, when you take the cream for the truma. Now, if when you take from the vinegar, it's not truma, then there wouldn't be a sin. It just doesn't count. It must be when you take from the cheap stuff, it's truma, but it's a sin, because you're supposed to not be a cheapskate. And that's what the Gemara says, if it doesn't have a shame truma, then why would it be a sin? It would be nothing. It would be a do-over. So therefore the Rabbanan hold when you take from the chametz, which is inferior wine, it's good. But by a sale, wine and vinegar have different purposes. Wine is used to drink, and vinegar is used, to clean the barbecue grill. They're used for different things. So there, since Mark wanted to clean his barbecue, he gives him wine, it's no good. Mark wanted to toast, a mazel tov, im Yitz Hashem, it's no good vinegar, right? Everybody holds some want wine to make a toast. They're not cleaning their barbecue. Some people want to clean the barbecue or use it for a toothache. They don't want a wine. Now, the next Gemaras, we're going to learn a lot about kinyonim. There's a lot of laws with kinyonim. As we know, by metaltalin, the Rabbanan made it that it's not enough to pay money. Money is not kind. You have to make a kinyan. Now, the very best kinyan is hagvah, to pick it up. Hagvah is kind of b'chol makam. If you pick it up, it acquires, even if you're in the house of the seller. But if it's a heavy item, so then you're not going to pick it up. Then the kinyan is meshicha, to draw it to you. But meshicha doesn't work in the property of the seller, because you have to draw it into your rishus. So meshicha will work if you pull it in a simta, in a side street. It doesn't work in the rishus harabim either, because you can't show bailus in the rishus harabim, ownership in the rishus harabim. If it's a simta, a side street, so then pulling it to you works, or it will work if it's in the area of a partnership, where you both own it. So then if you pull pull it to you, it works. So now let's get the case over here. Here, Mark sells fruit to Marshall. He's selling him delicious, red, delicious apples. Good apples. He's selling him 10 apples for $5. So Mark sells the fruit to Marshall. Marshall pulls it towards him. Even though that he doesn't measure, he doesn't know how much fruit there is, but he made up a price. The price was $5 for $10. The 10 for $5. So whatever it is, he's going to pay that rate, and he made Meshicha Kana. Madad, if he measured it, but Veloy Mashach, but he didn't pull it to him, then like Kana, because he has to make the Kinyan of Meshicha. Now, Imaya Pikeach, if Marshall, this is a big if, but Imaya Pikeach, if Marshall was smart, right? So, if Marshall was smart and he didn't want Mark to back out, so he didn't want Mark to back out, and he's in Mark's house. So he can't do Mashiach in Mark's house. And it's too heavy to pick up. So how does he lock it in? He doesn't have his gun with him. So Imaya Pikeach, if he was smart, Seicher es Mekaiman, he would rent the area where it is. If he rents the area underneath it, then it would be in his rishus and he would acquire it. Halakach pishton mechaveira. Here, Marshall is buying flax for Mark. So, if he's in, let's say, Mark's house, Harizeloi Kana, he doesn't acquire it. Actually, until he moves it from one place to another. He would have to move it, let's say, either from the Rosh Hashanah to a Simta, or he would have to move it into his property. But if the flax was attached to the ground, now it has a whole different rule. If it was attached to the ground, it's real estate. Real estate you acquire by making a chazaka. By making a chazaka, taking hold of it. So there, the Talish Kolshu, if he uproots just part of it, so he's taking hold of part of it, that's called the Kinyan Chazaka, then Kana, then he acquires all of it. Now, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Zer. Now we're going to see some ambiguities in the Mishnah over here. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan, Modad, remember he's buying 10 apples for $5. So let's say Marshall buys 30 apples. Modad, v'aniach al gabe simta, if he measures, 30 apples, and he puts it on the side street, kana. Now here the question is, where did Marshall put it? Did he put it in his vessel? In other words, Marshall has his own vessel, and he puts it in the vessel on the side street. He acquires it because it's in his vessel. Or does it mean he puts it on the ground in the side street? And since the side street belongs to whoever is using it, he acquires it by putting it down on the ground. Amalei Reb Zera l'Ravasi. So Reb Zera wants to clarify. And Reb Zera says to Ravasi, Shema le'shama Rebbe, perhaps Rebbe only heard this halacha from Reb Yochanan, ela b'modei l'seich kupasai, where Marshall measures it into his basket, and he acquires it now because it's in his basket. Amalei, so he said, Dami Haimid Rabbanan, this scholar who's asking this question, seems to be kidolay gomrei in shmeitz, as if a person didn't learn the halacha. Madad l'seikupasa, if he puts it in his basket, memorable. Does that need a teaching? Of course you acquire it if you put it in your basket. The chiddush is he acquires it even if he puts it on the ground in the side street. So the Gemara says, did Reb Zera accept this from Reb Asi or not? Kibla minei? I like kibla minei. So the Gemara says, Tashma, the Amar Reb Yanei Amar Rebbe, Chotzer HaShutfin, a courtyard belonging to both of them, Kainin Zemizeh. They could acquire it one from the other when it's in the courtyard. My lav al gabe karka. Because a simta is like a courtyard belonging to both of them, because the side street also belongs to both of them. Right? So the Gemara says, my lav al gabe karka, that he acquires it even if he puts it down on the ground of the courtyard. No, only in the basket. And Hachanami Mistabra, the Amr Reb Yaakov, Amr Reb Yechon, Modad Vaniach al Gabe Simta, if you measure it and put it on the side street, like Kana, you don't acquire it. So Kashin Adadi. Here we say if you put it down in the courtyard belonging to both of them, you do acquire it. And here it says if you put it down in the side street, he doesn't acquire it. If you put it into his basket, he acquires it. If you put it on the ground, he doesn't acquire it. Shmamina. That's a good proof. That if you put it on the ground, you don't acquire it. You acquire it if you put it in Marshall's basket. Kashma, Modad v'loy moshach, if it was measured, but Marshall did not pull it like Kana. So the Gemara says, my lav besimta. Doesn't that mean that if he measures it and he puts it down in front of him and he didn't do Mashiach, so he doesn't acquire it? My lav besimcha. It was emptied when he measured it in the floor, and he didn't do Mashiach, he doesn't acquire it. So that's a riot to what we just said. Says it's not a riot, it's talking about Rishus HaRabim. If he put it down in front of him in the Rishus HaRabim, says the Gemara, that doesn't work. If it's in the Rishus HaRabim, even the Mashiach won't work, because Mashiach doesn't acquire in Rishus HaRabim. If he pulls it and he didn't measure it, kana. But Mashiach Rishus HaRabim mikanya, pulling it into Rishus HaRabim, could you acquire it by pulling it into Rishus HaRabim? Handing it over, if Mark hands it over to him in a ritual handover, that acquires even the Rishus HaRabim. Or a courtyard that belongs to neither of them. Mashiach pulling it, Marshall pulls it, kind of a simta on the side street, or and a courtyard of both of them. Vagva kind of picking it up acquires it in all places. Says the Gemara, yeah, when it says, it's talking about in Rishus HaRabim. And that's why putting it in front of him, you don't acquire it. As we welcome in Richard Rosenzweig that is joining us. A lot of people have came in and joined us, and I wasn't very, very hospitable. Elliot Udell came in and joined us. Abe Arbach, Ilya Shutman, and Richard Rosenzweig. Says the Gemara, it's talking about in the Rishus HaRabim. If it's talking about in the Rishus HaRabim, then what does it mean? Moshach v'loy modad kana. My moshach nami de ketani. It means Rishus HaRabim l'simta. If Marshall pulls it from the Rishus HaRabim into the side street, then he acquires it from Mashiach. But what are you going to do? It says if he rents the area, if he was smart, right? Listen, Marshall, it's just a Farish Mishnah. Yeah, that's what the Mishnah means. If it was Chanukah, right? So, If he was smart, then he'd rent the area. But if it's a Rosh Hashanah, how could he rent the area? From who is he going to rent it? Says the Gemara, he'll rent the area underneath. The Iber Rosh Hashanah, if it's in the Rosh Hashanah, man Oger, who should he rent it from? Says the Gemara, Hachi Kama. This is the way to learn it. The Imber Rosh Hashanah, like I said, if it was in Mark's house, now Mark's house, Mashiach is not good. So if it's in Mark's house, and he doesn't want Mark to back out, and he rent the area underneath it, and then it would be in his property. We're going to stop over here, Rabbi Yisai, and now we're going to do a delicious Mishnah Gaimis.